Where's it playing right now? Where is this audio coming from? That's where it was coming from. The fucking YouTube. The YouTube tab. The streaming tab. I think what we were just hearing there was actually a bit of a feedback loop, which is great. I just did a live dub of Annie Lockwood's World Rhythms, which just had its reissue out on Room 40 with our homie Lawrence English, I believe, responsible for the remaster. Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome back to another Group Critique Fight Club Monday night edition. We having a good time. What do we got? What do we got going on? I know I owe y'all another monthly project. Having a fun week with a sick cat, so a little distracted on that front, but many fires burning at once. You will get it by the end of the month, but it was always going to be a April into May situation as well. So I appreciate your patience on that front, but One Man Music School has its many flaws. One of them being doing too much. One person doing too much, which is me all the fucking time. But you know what? We love it. We love it, don't we? We love it, don't we, folks? And if you love it and you haven't signed up for it yet, please support by going to the patreon.com/parrotski. Got some free openings in the private teaching schedule starting in May as well, for those that are curious about that. And for those that have signed up and are currently enrolled in our concrete Foley Arts and sample-based composition workshop, entering its second week of 3 this week. I hope you're enjoying it. I'm having a good time. And apologies in advance if the internet is shit. I've been having issues with it all fucking day. In fact, yesterday as well. So if I cut out, we go for as long as we can go. But yeah, what you were hearing just now is a compounded version of World Rhythms by Annie Lockwood. Yeah, Jesse, you heard what you were hearing was in fact a version of it on top of a version of it, because I was accidentally letting the audio from the YouTube tab that was just in my tabs showing my stream. I accidentally left the sound on that. So you were hearing two of them, which I guess might have turned into a feedback loop of sorts. Not an endless one, but a fun one, at least compounded. All right, looking here, it looks like we got everything in for today. We got 5 tracks coming up. Gonna open up our tab here. Where the hell is it? Hello? Why isn't it on the display? Let's go find it, shall we? Where is it? Screen capture, application, Firefox. Hello? No, that's the... There we go. There we go. Let's make sure that this is... Our chat is here. Blah, 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 blah. We got ourselves some tracks, starting with a final version from Jose of his track Porvenir, in which they write to us, added another lead and tweaked the arrangement a bit. One more of a revision, and I'm dropping this. So I'll say right off the bat, never name your files final. That's your first mistake, big mistake right there, because it's never gonna be the final. But let's hear this version of it. I won't call it the final yet, but you tell me. Very nice. Very nice. We're getting there. We are getting there. You know, we have our main sort of initial melody, which is the counter melody before the lead, to boom, bum, 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 right? And then bringing in that long monophonic pad. I think we just need to find a way to make that new lead more of a lead. You know, I think it's a bit buried in the mix as of right now, and this is stuff that you can obviously worry about as a sort of post-production, less compositional sort of approach to this, right? But like that new lead part gotta shine through, you know what I mean? And there are ways we could do that through the mix alone, you know, through we can saturate it, we can put it in a specific frequency bank that is like ultra resonant. That could be done even with just a filter that we can add to the channel strip there. We can also, you know, create a sort of auxiliary duplicate channel in which we pitch shift it, or even add some sort of granular delay that has its own sort of shimmering pitch shift, upward pitch shift or something like that. But I think it still needs to like become the lead, you know? Like this ain't shoegaze. Like we're not trying to like make a big wall of sound here. There are very distinct sort of instrument types here, and very distinct regions dynamically of the mix right now. And if we're gonna follow by the book here, our lead melody should be our monologue, our lead actor. You know, we gotta hear what they're saying. It's gotta be like prominently centered in our ears, and dynamically speaking, that means just kind of being above everything else, and that could be through both literal dynamics like levels, but also through the pitch, right? You know, having it up an octave, having it jump an octave on its second time around, you know, would be a very easy way to sort of imply a development in emotional sort of grounding. You know, we're really wanting to feel the romanticism of that lead, you know, but it would also sort of like indicate, you know, a increase in intensity, right? And these are things, this is not like, don't redo this. This is a very good version, you know? This could be a mix thing only, unless you wanted to change up even more about your melody. I mean, like, the first time through the melody, it's tight, it's kind of, you know, it's by the book, right? You can take more sort of moments to add a little humanness, a little imperfection to this, right? You could do some runs, you know, I mean, like you could do some, whether or not you could play that on the keys, you could certainly program some changes in there in which like things get a little more complex in the lead up to things, you know, like add some fills, you know, find a way to make it really feel like a live instrument so that it does really like it's deserving of the title of lead melody. You know what I mean? You've set a really good foundation here with this new piece though, or with this new part, you know, and now it's just making me imagining how much more we could push it, you know, using the materials that we have now as a foundation. What do we got here in the chat? Still makes me think Say Anything with robots. It's great, man. Could add some pitch shift or tape wobble somewhere to reveal that retro calm trues. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it does already feel like, especially with the drums, kind of this classic noise-based snare, you know, very 8-bit sort of drum sound to it, at least on that snare. And ultimately, yes, like a nostalgic or 80s, you know, simple synthesizers, you know. Do you want us to think that this is kind of like of that Comtrue's sort of like 80s inspired synthwave? I mean, like, yes, you could add more. I wouldn't say necessarily across the board. That would be something interesting to add to your lead instrument here, like at a certain point, not just lay into that VHS sort of tape wobbliness, but like second time around, a little more tape saturation, things like that. It's kind of like it's almost like breaking through the digital recording into what it's truly meant to be as like an analog tape bounce or something like that. I guess it's like how you got to ground this. The mix will help you ground its identity, because right now it still feels neutral as to like where we want this to be. Is this inspired by video game music? Is this inspired by sort of 80s synthwave, sort of, Miami romantic 80s neon synth pop? You know what I mean? Is this going for something a bit? I mean, and I do enjoy the modality of your B section there, this kind of like portamento-y, slightly dissonant by the key standards of the A section, but like you're getting into a little bit of danger melodically when you switch it up those few times. It's nice, so let the mixing process at the very least help you solidify like compositional intent, the identity here. What do you want us to believe when we hear this, because there's still many paths this could take, even with the drums too. I mean, like, it's very simple right now, but I mean, like, give us a final rototom, something, like we could still have a bit more, we could still take a few different sort of like creative sort of liberties here. Okay, there you are, Jose. I'm thinking more North England 1981. Okay, cool. Well, in that case, like, yeah, let's like run this through some saturation. Let's tape it up. Maybe not necessarily like full on warbliness, but like make it sound like we're coming through some rack mount gear. Make it sound like we're coming through a spring reverb. Make it sound like that, give it some air. Always talking about in the mixing process, even when we're doing entirely in the box sort of sounds. It's like, I want to hear the air from the synth. And that could be either coming from the speaker that we are virtually reamping it from. It could be from just like, carving out some noise into something that's otherwise a pure tone synthesis, like give us some zhuzh here, because if we're going for that 80s sound, like it is all sorts of saturated just by default. You know what I mean? Even with that Joy Division and the New Order stuff, like it's very clean, but it's not in the box. It's entirely out of the box. Everything is made with audio, not with virtual MIDI instruments. You know what I mean? So this is, again, like if that's your identity you're going for here, it's kind of like a nostalgic sort of North England, like Manchester-y sound, let's get there on the sort of mixing side of it, solidify the identity of the piece. Hell yeah. Solidify the identity of the piece. Brah. Good shit, Jose. Good to hear from ya. What do we got? We got more from Jesse. This is an updated draft of the piece I shared last Sunday. Let's call it Guided Generative. It's just the last half of the composition. Looking for feedback on 3 areas. The field recording, closing the piece. I got feedback last Zoom that it was undertreated and incongruous with everything else in the mix. That said, the heavy reverb bus of the piece is a lot for the outdoor recording, and I want to preserve that natural sound of the recording since it's like emerging back to reality at the end of the piece. Here I heavily high-passed the field recording and passed it through the reverb bus to blend with other voices and automated the filter/reverb send to morph into a more natural recording. Want to know if this approach works. Then second question, I used an AutoPan plugin on the main percussive voice. Since this voice covers bass frequencies, I split the signal into high and low pass filters. Highs end up getting panned. Low end is more mono. I think it sounds good, but I want input since I've never used this mix technique before. I kind of like that. Right, in theory, like that makes sense to me. Centralize your bass. If you look at any of those sort of like basic stereo spreader plugins, like Waves PS10 or whatever it's called, the spreader, very natural shape of it tends to be like low end centered, and then the further high end the frequency it gets, the wider it gets. So just right off the bat, that's actually like a technique that people do. So I'm sure it sounds fine, and we'll hear. And then the final point, the master track limiter might be making some unnatural pumping. In the past, I've found these issues to be negligible outside the DAW, so I want to know if others hear it. Okay, some good questions to think about. We're thinking about the field recording, reverb and filter bus. We're thinking about the auto pan on the percussive voice, and we're thinking about the master limiter on everything. Okay, Perg Gen example draft. All right. Yeah. Looking like I dropped internet connection there. Hopefully I'm coming back. Still says no fucking data. Great. Love that. Love that. Is it live still? Is it live? Love this. God bless Verizon Fios and everything going on here. We still running? We still running here? All right. Looks like we're on. Looks like we're on, but not great. Cool. Cool. Love that. Love that. Okay. Someone give me an indication that we're live. All right. It says we're good. Whatever. I love this. You are a slideshow, but the audio is fine. Great. I love slideshows. I love slideshows. I'm PowerPointing this bitch. Good stuff, man. Just going off of the questions you had asked. I'm with Breathplay on that. I think the field recording is a very nice touch. You know, it's pretty subtle for the most part, and then finding its way to the front by the end, I think dynamically is a good call. Not to have this constant air throughout outdoor, but sort of like you said, like let it surface. I think that was a good call. Sort of bringing us out of the synthesis a bit, which is nice. I think yes, the auto pan works absolutely well because it's, you know, every sort of low thud remains right in the middle, and the sort of spectralism happens on the high end, and we can really hear it sort of bouncing around there, which works pretty well. I hope I'm coming through here in my audio right now. It seems like some of us are. But yeah, I mean, like, is chat updating in the future for anyone? It looks like it's updating. No? You tell me. You tell me. Are we still in there? What does it say on the YouTubes? I don't know. Says we're good. Says we live. Yeah, look at that. Look at this. It says excellent now. I'm excellent. I think just the limiter is the one thing that actually could, that final question you were talking about is that, like, now dynamically, like, it's certainly spacious and it certainly has plenty of you know, it takes full advantage of the stereo image from left to right. But it all feels one zone dynamically, you know? It would be really nice to get a little bit more extreme in there, like smaller sounds, and then like jump scare level jolts in dynamics, you know? It all kind of remains in this one zone dynamically right now, and I think that the limiter also has something to do with that, because that tends to just kind of like bring the floor up as far as like the quietest sound goes. And I think that this could have a little more room for quiet, you know, because we're really just playing through full volume in the synthesis from the jump to basically the end when it fades out, you know? And I think that we could just have a bit more nuance in the sort of dynamic placement of these parts, you know? And there could be an arc to it. It starts quiet and ends loud. It could be jolting, like I had mentioned. But like finding a way in your mix now, riding the levels. This is not about the synthesizer. This is about in the DAW, you know, hands on the faders, making points of change throughout in order to create this arc. I think that's important, and that's mixing, you know? It's not just about the type of EQ and compressor you're using, but it's really just about dynamic control. And like the most crucial executive way to just like make it happen is to just ride levels, you know? And that's how things were done for decades prior to point and click automation in the DAW or on a digital console, you know? So this is the type of thing that like I would really recommend, like make a few takes of it. If you could route into your DAW a MIDI controller in which you can control your faders with the channel faders in the DAW with faders on the MIDI controller, I would just like do some handmade passes at a final mix at levels in which like you are deliberately sort of following a score that you've decided on, in which like here's the dynamic range starting here, ending here, here are the moments where it peaks, blah blah blah, you know. I just think that is going to make it feel that much more alive, because I know you're working with generative instrumentation, right? But that doesn't mean it doesn't need to feel robotic in the dynamics, you know. We could absolutely create a fluctuation in dynamics by hand, you know, or you could do it in theory, think about the arc of the piece and then, you know, program your dynamic marks, the point and click, and hear how it sounds, you know. I just enjoy sort of emulating the analog studio console experience, even within the DAW, just by hand mixing and riding levels by hand. I think that that's a crucial skill. You know, you're basically conducting the mix via your DAW. You know what I'm saying? So give us some of that. Give us that final touch, that final stamp of approval handmade from Jesse. You know? We're getting there, dog. We're getting there. Good on the other questions, though. I don't have any doubts. I don't have the doubts. Good stuff. All right. What do we got? All right, breath play. Ooh, this will be fun. This is a dub take of Grouper's Clearing. I recorded this both in Rekordbox and acoustically with my Zoom and blended the two in Ableton. Talk about room tone. So the actual dub is surrounded by the sounds of my bedroom and me operating the CDJ. Getting some click-clacking. 1, this is currently the best take I have. Would we like a more practiced one? And 2, as listeners, are we curious to hear version without the field recording aspect? I'm considering an LP-style rollout for my next long-form mix involving alternate single versions of dubs and blends. All right. Going off, just what Jesse had said in the chat just now, I will say there is a lot more dead space in the first half of the composition, which isn't shared due to the time restrictions, but point taken. Yeah, but are those quiet moments? Like, dead space in between notes doesn't equal dynamics of the notes that are there. You know, that just means space. That just means patience. And I have no doubt that it's plenty patient, right? But that still doesn't account for dynamic choice from beginning to end. Less things might seem quieter, but those individual hits might be pretty loud. You don't know, you know. So dynamics across the board, regardless of how busy it is. That's a given. Okay, back to breath play. As listeners, are we curious to hear more version of this without field recording? I'm considering an LP style rollout for my next long form mix, involving alternate single versions of dubs and blends. Okay, so the question is, do we need a tighter performance of this? And are we interested in this sort of room tone experimental recording approach, or would we prefer something just more direct? Okay, cool. Let's check it out. Clearing breath play. Hold. What happened? We lose the audio at the end? What the fuck? It cut out. Hold on. Hold on. Tape trade! No! Tape trade! I think this is great. I think this is very nice. And for those that don't know, with the original piece, they're basically room tone field recordings themselves of Liz Harris at an arts residency with I think just like a Tascam and a Zoom, playing the piano and then doing voice afterwards. But the window is open. Like, it's just like, it's so grounded. I believe it was in Italy. I'm not sure where it was. But it just felt so grounded in this like little cabin somewhere in the woods, with that entire Ruins album by Grouper. And so in many ways, by making this dub, which sounds, there's no indicator of source material here, as many Breathplay dubs would be. It doesn't sound like we even reveal that this is an acoustic, a Grouper piano and voice recording as the origin source material here. There's no clear indicator of that, and that's totally cool. So, like, how can we still stay true to the origins while making it completely our own? And I think that, like, grounding it in the nice spread between DI recording and room tone recording is really nice. Maybe I would say we find a way to start and end more prominently in the room tone, but then by the middle, as it really starts to fill in with these like kind of like repetitive organ-esque sort of low-end drones, we sort of crossfade slowly in the mix into the much more prominently DI, less room tone. Like, it would be nice to sort of like, as if we are like starting here and then we begin to disassociate and we float off into space, and then by the end we're brought back to reality and we're still in the room, you know, like to create this sort of character arc to the, we are POV spinning this in a room, you know. I think that, yeah, exactly, like leave the room like behind completely for a while. That's a good, yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, doesn't need to be completely, but like having this like juxtaposition of where we are in the space, and at a certain point we don't even realize that we've completely left the room. I've lost that room tone entirely, and then like Like by the very end, it sort of gently comes back, you know? That might be interesting. I think that that would be a way to sort of like bring this all together that makes it feel that much more cohesive. I mean, I could see them both existing separately, but I don't really see the reason if we were to like find a way to like toy with the room tone recording and the DI recording in this sort of creative arc sort of way. It might be superfluous to have to separate them if we are, you know, sort of zhuzhing them around right in the levels. I think it's an interesting. Sort of way to approach this. I think the performance is fine. I don't see that's the thing is that like we're making experimental tape music performance here, utilizing source material that doesn't sound like its endpoint. So like what constitutes a like tight, like accurate, like virtuosic performance here? It's a bit subjective. To me, there were no like obvious hiccup red flags that took me. If there's anything, like the one thing we could say is like something that takes us out of this disassociative state. And none of that ever happens. So I think you're good on the performance. I think now it's just this idea of like deliberately choosing to tell the listener where they are, to make those decisions. I think would be a good call. What do I got here? Sorry, I'm just moving my screen. Yeah, I think that would be the right move here. It's just like toying with the diegesis, We're all about the diegetics here in Fight Club. And this should be a great excuse for everybody to, when in doubt, what does my mix need to like, bring it to life or ground it somewhere, is to do the reamp. I don't know who it was that mentioned earlier for Jesse to try, or was it for Jose to play the track through through some shitty, like Jake said, play through some shitty car stereo and re-record it there. Yeah, like the car stereo reamp is another great example. I love the room tone, literal like in my room, bedroom room tone as well, because there's something so like clear about that where we are. It feels very much like an empathetic listen. I completely relate to what I'm hearing and I know where I am. Breathplay writes, the long-form mix will be a bricolage of multiple fidelities and real/fake environments. Maybe that version has a diegesis play, and then an advanced single version could just be the digital one. Sure, by all means, if it fits into a sort of arc that we're talking about here, thematic arc in the long-form mix, then then you got your work cut out for you. There's plenty that you can do as far as like this juxtaposing of the DI to the room tone sort of room recording, right? But then again, like if you're making something that you want to have different cuts, by all means, like just do a clean version, clean edit. You know what I mean? Would not be out of the ordinary at all. And it could work as a single, like you said. I dig it. Does not sound like clearing. And that's cool. That's very cool. All right. Let us move on. Thank you, Breathplay. Got a few more today. I need some water. All right, King Dead. Oh shit! King Dead. Was I supposed to do you first because you're on a sketchy? My bad. If that's true. Actually, it looks like Anytime Will Work coverage is there. Okay, never mind. We are good. King Dead wrote us, here's what's shaping up to be the intro track for the next album. Lots of layered field recordings, jamming along to those layers. Then the radio tunes into a real song before quickly fading out. Going to break that song down for the next few tracks. I'm going to work for the LP, the melody in one space, the chord progression somewhere else. Try to record it acoustically, and I may or may not just make a full version of that song depending if I can break or bridge into it. Okay. Let's give it a shot. We got the track, what is it? Aku by King Dead. Let's go. Very nice. Very nice. It's got me intrigued onto where this is going to lead to, you know? Like you said, like it's a sort of hodgepodge, a sort of deconstruction of the field recordings, and then the like location sounds and the field recordings of the radio, and then the very deliberate and real sort of musical gestures that we have sort of scattered throughout this. So is the idea that you're talking about here is like using these as kind of like motif references for songs that are yet to come on the record? Like, are we going to hear like this, like as like the first sort of like synth swell in the next song, this bass line, doom, 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 you know, like are we going to find ways to like make this relate directly like through like the production vocabulary and the literal sounds themselves in the other songs? Because I mean that would be an interesting sort of like, what we're hearing here is like a preview, sort of like a sizzle reel deconstruction of everything. Like it's all it's all foreshadowing what's to come in a way. Because I mean, like this feels like a true intro, but I would hope that like what comes immediately afterwards has some immediate relation to this, you know, like both including the field recordings and the radio sounds, but at the very least tonality. You know, we've developed a tonal center here. It's not exactly sure where we're going exactly in the progression, but we can find that doom, boom, boom, you know, like we do have this sort of either, you know, implied minor or major sort of tonal center to this. So I would hope that whatever comes immediately afterwards is not going to be like a complete change in the channel, but that we do actually have direct correlation. And if that carries out throughout the album, interesting. You know, if it's an EP, there'd be plenty of okay, if it's an LP in this case, I mean, there's plenty of time in which to make those references. I would just like make that clear, you know. In the very least, make it crystal clear in track 2 that there is a, you know, direct bridge between intro into the next thing, you know. This is something to think about in general with like track listing and composing for an LP or an EP. Is just like, how does the very end of song 1 relate to the very beginning of song 2, etc., etc., etc. That could be just through the air, like the final tail end of verb or whatever, cutting through into the next track. Could be a complete, total fade to black, cut to silence, and then start fresh in the next song, you know? But this is like, these are deliberate choices that should be sort of made throughout the compositional process. And then, like, in the very least, like, I'm finding ways to tie them together. Would they write? Okay, so tonal musique concrète. Yeah, I like that. Breathplay saying, I would love for the VIP of this where the beat stays with us for longer. The beat was nice. Yeah, I mean, like, if that's just sprinkling in a preview of what's to come, by all means, do it. It was such a good groove. Would love to dance to. Jake saying, yes, the theme and the variations for sure. Echoes of this throughout the rest of it. The tuning into the radio jams. Okay, so it's kind of like treating the album as if we're tuning in to various radio stations. The old Queens of the Stone Age technique. Perfectly appropriate. Totally works. I would still find ways to like make musically, in the more traditional musical sense, tonally, have there be direct correlations, so that we really truly feel this cohesion as if we're watching a full, you know, like a feature length film, and not just like 10 vignettes that have nothing to do with each other. You know what I mean? There's an art form to not only composing with things in mind, but then like just choosing your track listing effectively. It's like writing a screenplay. It's writing an essay. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to make an argument from beginning to end, and it has to be cohesive and make sense that you decided to put track 2 into track 3, you know, or at least in the very least, like deliberate choice there. They continue to write. Yeah, the LP I think has to have the points to jam on to and from, and some real songs have some real songs already, but they're too fully formed and traditional, so I want to tunnel between them. Okay, so I mean, in this case, like, why not create like transitional sort of the etudes, the miniatures between the songs could be more moments like this, you know? Why not create transitional material that is more largely concrete in between the more formal songs, you know? There's plenty of ways to do this, but whatever it is that like you have to treat this LP like an opera in which like you are making a story here, very deliberately trying to correlate point A to B to C to D, etc. That requires sort of like deliberate thought while you're doing it, you know. Don't let the cohesion of the LP be an afterthought, and that goes for everybody. Like, how deliberate, how connected and cohesive do you want this to feel? I think that like an EP has more of a leg to stand on as far as either feeling like one short film, like it's just one place that we're staying the entire time, or over the course of 3 or 4 tracks, like we're really making some drastic hard turns in between, you know, like for the end of track 1 into track 2 could be very sudden shifts, versus like the LP, because, you know, the EP you might be wanting to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time, but with the LP, it's like, take your time. You should have the patience to get from point A to B. And if it requires some sort of transitional sort of etude miniature 30-second thing in between proper songs or whatever, allow that to be its own thing. Let them have, you know, you wouldn't be the first person to do that, to add like a collage element to it, or in the very least some sort of diegetic, break us out of the song, put us back into the ears, POV, or point of POL, point of listening, of wherever this is coming from in a car stereo, right? And then you know, bring us back into the next song, you know. Plenty of things you could do with this. I'm looking forward to how it goes down, and I would love for you to submit next a formal song to pair this with. potentially, what would your track 2 sound like here? Would that be a formal song following this immediately? Good questions to ask. This works. I'm enjoying the sound world that you've cultivated so far, and even more so, grounding it with location sound just as much as like fully in the box sound. Good stuff. Good. All right, looks like we got one more for today. We got another from Cuckoo coming in. They wrote, wanted to finish the track from the previous Monday, but technical difficulties stopped me, so I went cuckoo bananas on the faders with another beat. Cuckoo, going cuckoo on the faders, playing us out. Let's go. This that handmade music I'm talking about, y'all. I know you're just having fun, Cuckoo, but you're proving my point here. That hands on the faders creates, it takes us, even with very clearly loop-based music, it takes us out of the consistently stagnant or at least flat sort of loop trajectory of these phrases. You know what I mean? Just and you're making some decisions that are very drastic at times, and sometimes they're very subtle, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is why this could be applied to any music, and we would have a similar result, not aesthetically as far as dance music goes, but just like taking something that feels very much like sequential, very much formulaic, such as a loop or a sequencer or just, a repetitive phrase of any kind, and allowing for your hands to sort of determine loudness, or at least dynamics, in a way that at times can be very obvious and other times very subtle. You're writing, yeah, first time I use this technique, and honestly, I'm going to do sidechains manually from now on, for techno at least. Absolutely. Give us the console mix. I'm a huge fan of those hardware sets where they got everything in the fucking kitchen sink on the stage, and we're really seeing the artwork come through the console. This is the origins of dub right here. King Tubby, Lee Scratch Perry, Sly and Robbie, they turned the console into a performable instrument, and this could be applied to any music. It's acousmatic music. It's concrete just as much as it is techno, just as much as it is dub. This is the history of the console. Writing levels transcends genre. This is what I'm talking about in my concrete and Foley Arts and sample-based class. Is that like we're talking about like the mixer. The technology is very universal in each of these eras, whether it be the 1950s or the 70s through 80s up through the contemporary. And, we were all using mixers. We were all using synthesizers. Now we're all using DAWs. It's context comes in sort of like the cultural affiliations you have genre-wise, but like the technology is a through line regardless of those cultural affiliations. It's how you use the technology that makes it one style or one culture versus another, and dub is just one small sort of region in which like the console was utilized as the sort of the final say, and it had to be done by hand. It might be one of the first examples of like dance music being used, or dance music that allowed for the console to be used this way. But this is something that transcends genre, and you're showing that here. Loving those, like just some growls upwards. Why'd you hide that reverb until the very end, though? It was bone dry for 90% of it. And then we start to hear this air come through on your hall setting or whatever. I want more of that. Let's get some fucking low pass filters on there, scoop out all the highs and send it through a fucking tunnel. Have fun with this. Be more patient, This is only 3 seconds and 3 minutes and 20 seconds. But the verb, man, it's not just about that dub delay. It's about the verb, like give us some air, play with that, be more patient, I know that this was just a jam and a quick one at that, but like you got something going here that's worth exploring, and that goes for everybody. When in doubt, I'm looking at my DAW and I see a bunch of channels that have already been recorded, and I just see a bunch of flat levels dynamically. It's like that should be an indicator that you gotta like get your hands dirty, do it with your hands. You won't regret it, I promise. It will make something seemingly loopy, robotic, computer generative, whatever you want to call it, that much more human. It'll create an android. I think I'm getting the point you made to me a little more now. Yes, there you go, Jesse. It's different though. No one, you shouldn't be expected to just know this. This is mix engineering. In a perfect world, you could dedicate your life to just being the mix engineer, and that's the art form, right? It's the fact that we have to fucking hustle and do everything ourselves that it's like we might as well learn the techniques of the greats in everything from synth patching through mix engineering by hand, even mastering. There's art form across the board, but it's don't beat yourself up for not just knowing how to do this. The only way that I didn't learn this through self-taught like DAW work, I learned this by going to school and then shadowing people out of school when I was interning and working at some studios and stuff, shadowing and seeing how people would work with an analog console, because it was something that I didn't have access to at home, But this is something that we can emulate at home. That's the most important part. We can emulate the analog signal flow in the very least simply just by writing levels by hand. Give us that much more. It can be very subtle. Does not need to be a big obvious thing. But in this case, it's obvious and it's fun when it's obvious. Good shit, Cuckoo. Good shit from all of you. It looks like that's it for our Monday submissions for today. We got 5 killer tracks up on our growing April 2026 playlist we got going on here. We got one more next week. Please continue to be patient. I will have your guest artist and monthly project shortly. And yeah, it's been a pleasure hanging with all of y'all. Hope this was fun. Always love hearing your works in progress. Keep working at it. Hope everybody has a wonderful week. And I will see you on Sunday. Back at it on the Patreon edition of Group Critique Fight Club. And then a week from today, back at it here on the public stream. Again, if you haven't signed up, please do. Appreciate the support. Patreon.com/Parrotsky. You get access to this twice a week rather than once a week. And hit me up, parrotsky.xyz. Sign up for private lessons for starting in May if that appeals to you. Good stuff. Working on a few interesting things. Got some cool stuff coming up next month. Hope to see y'all very soon. Have a wonderful evening. Take care, everybody.